morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Samantha Hidalgo. Welcome to Igniting Hope Radio. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a public health program manager here at the Buffalo Center for Health and Equity, and it is an honor and privilege today to welcome Keelan from the Partnership for the Public Good. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. My name is Keelan, Director of Finance and Operations. Good. PPG is a community-based think tank. We do research, policy development, and advocacy work in the community. We unite to over 380 partner organizations in the community. These organizations include block clubs, nonprofits, church and religious organizations, educational institutions. It really varies who our 380 partners are. Always growing, wonderful. Again, we do a lot of research that's specific to the region, and a lot of our work is rooted in an annual process that we have called the Community Agenda. Each year, any of our 380 partners can submit a policy change that they want to see on the city, county, or statewide level. They come out and they pitch all 380 partner organizations, or certainly all of our organizations, kind of come out to hear the pitch and vote on their top 10 choices. So, for example, past December, we had 17 coalitions come out to pitch. We had about 120 of our partners come out to vote. So 120 partners decided on what our priorities would be for this year. One of which was calling on the city of Buffalo to adopt ranked choice voting.
I was there actually and had all of the tickets to vote from our organization. We've been a PPG partner now probably about 2 years since the first meeting I had with Andrew, your executive director. And even if you're not a voting person or you're not voting for on behalf of an organization, the energy in the room is next level insanity in the best possible way. Like it is, you leave so fired up for all of the different things that are going on. And I guess maybe that leads me to my first question is, like, where does your advocacy begin and end as an organization? I know you guys don't do stuff at the federal level, correct?
Correct. We just mostly do, again, we really try to focus and base our work on the 10 priorities that make it out of the community agenda. Sometimes we do carry over some work from prior year's initiatives. We often don't get involved too much in other matters that aren't on the community agenda. But certainly, if we think that it aligns with our mission and our principles, we will get involved. But yes, anything on the city, county, state.
Awesome. So the plank that we're going to be talking about today is ranked choice voting. But I think maybe to give listeners a good idea of how varied some of the planks can be, do you mind sharing some of the other ones? Because we as an organization work on 3 planks out of the 10, which is crazy. But I know that's not the only 10. So just an idea of like how big or small some of the other things are.
Yeah, they really vary. The top choice for this year was restoring the Parkway, moving through the Expressway. Other initiatives include passing a working families tax credit to give families more income to provide for their kids. We also have piloting a community responder team in Erie County. I know that Colleen has been this on our team to speak to that. We also have plans on reforming the suspensions in Buffalo public schools, and let's see what else.
I'm going to shoot one in there. Community benefits agreement.
Oh yes, that's huge too. Yeah, Erie County, yes, passing a community benefits agreement, which would mean that anytime county money is allocated, whether it be tax break or any subsidy or any grant funding, it would require some specific that denotes the developer or business has to allocate some funding and direct community.
I think one of the things I love about all of the planks is that they are all connected in some way or another. But we're going to give kind of a special light to the one that we're working on together in this wider coalition of ranked choice voting. those who aren't familiar with ranked choice voting, could you explain a little about what it is and what it isn't?
Sure. So right now, how our elections run is it's plurality votes, winner takes all. Whoever has the most amount of votes, goes on to win the election. You could theoretically win with just 30% of votes. If there's 5 to 6 people running for one office, it might be the first person who's in first place only maybe gets 30 votes. That's a small, amount of people who are dictating, or a small vote share that's dictating who the next elected will be in that case. Choice voting is a newer system that has come out over the last few years that allows people to rank. It could be all the candidates or a less number of candidates. It allows you to rank your top candidate, maybe a top 3, top 4. That can be decided through the legislation, but it really gives more strength to democracy and ensuring that your voice is heard with your vote. You might like a few candidates, you might really dislike a couple as well. So it allows you to, again, rank priority, and because of that, it does encourage more candidates to run. More often than not, people will see a big name, whether through politics or just organizing, business, just a name that people know around town. People see that someone like that is running, who has the money and the resources. They might not throw their hat in the ring. They can see a shot in the dark. It's going to go where it seems like everyone's going to go for that candidate. People also worry about not running because if their platform is similar to someone else's, they don't necessarily want to split the vote, if you will, which would then allow maybe someone that you really dislike from having an edge. I think more choice to voters. I think everyone in the coalition would agree. And, just makes people feel like the election is fair and your vote is being heard. I think it's timely to talk about this given the mayoral election that we have now. I think we're ending up with 5 people on the ballot for the Democratic primary specifically, and if there was ranked choice voting, you would have more options with that. If you're a Democratic voter, and ranked voting, you'd be able to reach those candidates in the order of preference. Right now, it's looking likely, this being a heavy Democrat in the city, that whoever wins this primary has a good shot of winning the election in November. And being that there's 5 candidates, the person who wins the primary might, as I said in my earlier example, might only win with 30% of the vote.
Which is, again, not a lot.
Not a lot. And then if they make it on to the general and win, which again in a heavy Democratic Party city, is likely, that means that our winner is now determined by 30% of the people who voted in the primary, and generally primary turnout is lower than the general election.
That math.
Yeah, again, 30 people. If to begin with, only 30% of registered, Democratic Party vote, and then out of those 30% who do decide to vote, only 30% vote for the winning candidate. That's a very, very small amount of people who are deciding who our next mayor will be. So I think this is a very timely conversation to, tap legislators, council members, and people in the community to educate them about what ranked choice voting is, how it gives the electorate more power, and hopefully we can make some change.
I think one thing that stuck out to me when I first learned about ranked choice voting was that it didn't have to be defensive voting. I don't want this other person to win, so I'll vote for someone that maybe doesn't align with my values or things that I want to see happen in my community, but I'm so scared that if I don't vote for this person, then this other person that I really, really don't want to be in office will win. And that, I think, kind of defeats the purpose of having elected officials, right? If I'm only voting because I'm scared that somebody else will win, how do I enact the change I want to see in my communities, potentially, right? And I think when I first heard about ranked choice voting, it felt so big, right? I'm like, that's a big thing to do, in part because, as I learned earlier this week, we haven't really had ballot reform in the city of Buffalo for at least the last 40 to 50 years. And so I'm wondering if you could talk about other examples of ranked choice voting, either here in New York State or other parts of the country, and if it's been successful or not.
Sure. So ranked choice voting again has started to be implemented throughout the country, sometimes statewide, local elections, presidential. It really varies based on the municipality. I know that in Utah, for example, there's over 30 to 40 municipalities in Utah that have ranked choice voting. They're one of the largest states to, not that they have it statewide, but almost all their municipalities do have it. They also have ranked choice voting in Alaska, in Maine for some of their elections, also in cities such as Santa Fe, New Mexico, Minneapolis, and St. Paul, Minnesota.
So it is possible to do it.
New York City, Washington, D.C. just passed it. So there's, lots of places where this is being done. There are examples, that you can take from and learn from. Also, like, if the city were to look to adopt, or the county, or any city in New York, the language is already there on the plate. So you don't have to be starting from scratch how you would feed that language into legislation and city charter and code. But you can just take from what other cities have done. Again, being in New York State, it's both easy and a little tricky to look to New York City, only because they are another city in New York. But while we are the second largest city, such a stark difference. But anyways, New York City started this in 2021 for their mayoral primaries, when it all came down to all the different rounds of voting. When I say rounds, how ranked choice voting works is you keep going through people's choices until someone can vote. When all was said and done, when they went through all the rounds and did all the reallocation of the votes in 2021, Eric Adams won by less than 1%. It was a very close race.
That's incredibly tight.
I think he had about 50.5%.
Wow.
In second place, a woman whose name I'm forgetting, she got about 49. It was very close. When you fast forward to now, because again, that was the first time doing it, we were learning from it. Now, again, similar to Buffalo, they're having another mayoral election, and now you're starting to see that different parties and unions and organizing groups are starting to endorse not just one candidate, but multiple. You're seeing a lot more camaraderie around people sort of running as a slate. And when I say slate, I mean, vote for your top three. It's up to you to decide based on our policies and priorities how you want to rank us, but at least vote for us. It prevents a lot more bashing candidates because you have to work on getting some second vote or third vote or fourth.
It's not just vote for that guy because he's going to or she's going to do that to you. Vote for a group of us. And I think that's one of the things I was drawn to when we first learned about ranked choice voting was that it has the pathway to less acrimonious, less mud-breaking elections where it's all just slander and not really talking about policy change or vote for me because I'm not going to do what the other person is doing.
Right. It's very polarizing right now, our election. People love to bash other candidates to make sure they seem on top, and that's just not great. It's not civil. There's a lot of divisiveness in this country and around elections. A lot of people, don't like politics because they think it's so dirty. Ranked choice voting helps candidates focus on the issues that impact voters most. Back to my example of endorsing multiple candidates, the Working Families Party in New York City endorsed Sherman.
Wow.
I think there's 9 or 10 in the Democratic primary, and they just come out and endorse 4. Again, you're seeing many different groups come out and support 2, 3, 4 candidates, but you just don't see.
No,
but this allows you, voting allows an organization to do that, or an individual. I thought it was funny walking my dog 2 days ago. I went down one of my neighboring streets on the west side, and I saw someone with a Sean Ryan lawn sign as well as a lawn sign. And I was thinking, this person really loves ranked choice voting.
Yeah.
because people do, I can understand why someone would like multiple candidates
Yeah.
and really not like other candidates. Again, ranked choice voting just allows people more choice and feeling more comfortable with their decision and the outcome of the
Yeah.
election.
And I think to your point earlier about how contentious elections have been, we live in a predominantly two-party political system. And so how does ranked choice voting fit into something as old as our political system? To your point, we're seeing union organizations endorsing multiple candidates, right? Which is not something we traditionally see. How does the two-party system and ranked choice voting either fit together or not fit together?
So it really depends on the legislation. Some states, municipalities have ranked choice voting for the primary and the general. Some just have it for the primary. In New York City, it's just for the primary. So it doesn't really affect the party system so much because they don't have it for the general. It's a little tough to do that in New York State with the distribution voting that we have. Democrats and working families, sometimes they both have their own line with the candidate, Republican, conservative, same deal. Given that that is the voting system we have in New York State, it would be hard to implement ranked voting in general. But in other states, for example, Alaska allows you to do it in general too. So you could rank Democrats, Republicans, independents. Maybe there's a bunch of independents
Yeah.
they were able to collect signatures. So I will say that it does help to lessen the power of a two-party system in cases where that does work. Um, Again, it's just giving more choice. I feel like often a two-party system, it's very much black and white. And anyone who does any advocacy organizing or just like being a human, things are not black and white. There's so much gray area, and it's so hard to say something is like this or that. There's a lot more nuance to decision making and thoughts and ideas. I feel like this is just one way to bolster having more ideas, more opinions, more choices to vote on.
And I think that's what appealed to me as a voter, as a proud voter, is that sometimes I'm like, I like 90% of what you say, but that 10% is really nagging at me. But I really don't like what 60% of that guy says or that girl says, so I'm not gonna vote for them. But the idea of being able to rank and say, okay, this is my first choice, second choice, third choice, just as simply as it is, gives you more opportunity for choice. I think especially at the local level where we are much the result of things that have been voted on or things that have been passed in the legislature, the city or the county level. I think that affects us in real time much faster than maybe at the federal level, depending on what's happening at the state and federal level. I just think that if we were to introduce this, what would that then look like? Again, it's too short to implement it in our current mayoral election. To your earlier point, this is the first time in over 20 years that we've had an open primary for the mayor's office. So what would a ranked choice voting system look like here in Buffalo, for example, the mayoral election?
Yeah, so again, it depends on how the legislation is written, because you can define in the legislation how many people you can rank. Some allow you to rank all candidates, some say you can rank 4. But really, it would need to be done through the city passing legislation, the code, and also, I don't envision that would happen in the next few months. I would hope maybe in a few years we can work on getting some action. Certainly, there would have to be enough lead time between the enactment of the legislation before it goes into effect. I think it would be great to try to get this implemented for the 2027 council elections that will be taking place in 2 years. Simultaneously, the city just called and convened a charter review commission. One of our PPG staff members was appointed on behalf of Niagara District Council Member David Rivera. So we will have some representation, which is great, to be able to try to enact some of these certainly this policy and some of the others that have come up through the community agenda process. But I do think it would be good to, go to these charter review meetings and making sure our voices are heard. City.
I want to touch on that because as someone who's lived in Buffalo my whole life, I was unaware of how often or needed it is to review the charter and the code, both at a city level and local. It can sometimes be a little dry outside looking in to think about how granular some of the language has to be, right, for our city and our county. So can you talk a little bit about how often both the city and the county review the charter and the code, and maybe why it's important that we do it periodically?
Yeah. So the county actually has legislation that calls for it to happen in 10 years. The last time it happened was 2015. The next time it happens will be 2035. The city's charter doesn't have any provisions. It's really just when it's decided. It's the council members. The last time one was done in the early 2000s, so about 20, 25 years to the city. Would like to think that now we'll probably write in language around how frequently it can happen in the city. But it's important because things are always changing. There's always new ideas coming out. I mean, different county and city departments are all organized through the charter. So if you're thinking that you want to create a new department or restructure how departments are organized, that has to be done through the charter. So if there was any thought of, for example, at least one thing come out of the city charter review is we don't have a department of housing.
Yeah, it's through the
Office of Strategic Planning,
which was new to me. I thought that was separate.
Right. Because at many different cities, towns, whatever, like housing is its own thing. In a city where, anywhere, housing is its own word, right? Safe, affordable, housing. That's like one example of something that we could change, I think should be changed, as just one very minute example. But again, the way that towns, cities, county organized the charter, so it's just making sure that, in the year 2025, it's reflecting the reality of our community and what we need.
Outcome more accurate representation of I come from this community, therefore I represent this community.
Yeah, again, it encourages a lot more people to run, women, trans, non-binary, people of all races and ethnicities. Because again, you might see someone announce their candidacy, and maybe they were executive at a nonprofit, or maybe they were a city legislator and now they're running for assembly. They already have backing. That's very discouraging for someone to run, see that big name in there, even if they think they have good ideas. They think it might be a long shot. And again, if there's someone that has ideals that are very opposed to you, and maybe that other person thinks, you don't necessarily want to vote. That's a good thing too. So again, it encourages more diverse candidates to run, at least got. And that was seen in New York City in 2021, the mayoral election. I believe they also had council elections, or maybe the council election in 2023. But they found that they had the most amount of people run. And I believe that was the same case with the Democratic mayoral primary. They had the most people ever. There was like 10 to 12 people. Because they viewed that there would be more shot of them. So if you go to like rankthevote.org, something like that, they have a lot of reports and fact sheets that they have come out with. They looked at New York City and how it includes, the amount of people who ran, the amount of ideas proposed. And as a result, there were a lot of like new representation, if you will. A lot of people have different ethnic and racial backgrounds. I forget, but they've listed maybe like 5 different who were maybe like from an African, family from an African country moved to America. So maybe they're like Ugandan American something, being the first city council member of that person. be elected. I don't know that that's a specific example, but there were maybe like 5 or 6 of those cases in 2023 where people were elected to represent the first of that community and cultural background. They were able to bring. It's good to have those, again, diverse opinions when we're creating legislation, because there's so many different people in our communities, and we want to make sure that we're.
I think this would segue into what are maybe some of the talking points that are against ranked choice voting. We were in a meeting yesterday with our water coalition. We can get into what our coalition is. I believe we were talking about Southeast team, and there was a lot of pushback in 2021 when ranked choice voting was implemented and how it would affect seniors in the community and other kind of groups within those neighborhoods. And then now they've kind of talked themselves into a corner about now we need to develop ranked choice voting plans because our seniors or people in our communities are now interested in more than one candidate, right? And so we've been talking about how.
I mean, a lot of people say, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Some people think that our current system isn't broken and that it works. I would disagree. Maybe you would too. Maybe you all out there would as well. But I think that at least when it comes to everyday people, it can be a little confusing at first. You're used to going in, marking one bubble on the line for city council. This is completely different. I mean, this is the way it's like. So this is it. You need a lot of education around it. That first thought it can be. That first thought thinking on this ballot, I have to, 4 different things and put them in the right order. It can be a little confusing. There's different ways for your ballot to come out for not noting things correctly. So I think education is around it, everyday person, for it. But then when it comes to legislators and public officials, I mean, it does make elections more competitive. So there's a pushback from people, parties, for very loyal parties, and to current elected officials that may not like it because it does threaten their power a little bit, because it again encourages them to run. Again, you can't be divisive with your language. To work more camaraderie in your language to win more than just a voice vote.
You're their second and third.
So again, I think from the voter perspective, who's attempting the elected position, it'll be hard to change their minds because it does. Right.
And I think that's of education. When I hear things like how large seniors say this, I very much am responsible for that. But I do think sometimes it was infantilizes their seniors because they are capable of learning new things, right? They've been doing it their whole lives. Education is really important, and it's something we kind of locally are having more conversations about. If we were able to, get our city and county officials to write it into legislation, how we would then educate our community. And I don't think it's possible, right? It's been done in other places that are bigger, that are more diverse, that have way more candidates running for positions than we do. And it's been done in all of those places. Why can't it be done here?
It's also been done in smaller places.
It's been done in
bigger, smaller. Again, Burlington, Vermont, Portland, Maine, all of these places in Utah.
And both in conservative and in liberal communities, right? In places that are maybe historically voted all red or all blue. It's done in both.
Yes, it's done across the board, no matter political affiliation. I'm done.
Yeah, I think I get excited about ranked choice voting because I love anything with more community and for my neighbors. And I think especially because I know that it's been done before, like we're not going to be the first. And hopefully, if it happens, we won't be the last. I know we're kind of running quarter on time, and so if we could just take a minute to talk about what our coalition here looks like, how it was kind of established, and what it is we're trying to do in the meantime while we're working on the bigger things, maybe what are some of the smaller things.
Sure. So this started out of the community agenda. We actually partnership good. We had the statewide advocacy organization Unite New York reach out to us in the fall. asking if we would be having a discussion with our statewide organizers on RCV. They had seen that we had policy support on our Commons Library about RCV a couple years ago. So we convened a meeting of our partners to chat about it more. You all attended, and from there, engaged in interest in the room. PPG decided, and I did on behalf of PPG, pitched to be on the community agenda, and was pleasantly surprised to see that it came in number 5 on the agenda. Certainly, there's an appetite for electoral change in Buffalo. So once we got on the agenda, we started putting asks out to different organizations to form a coalition, and we've received great feedback. And partners signing on, I believe we're up to now 15 coalition partners, which is great, and we have more in the pipeline. So our coalition, it includes both of our organizations, Good, and our health equity. It also includes votes. It includes Bengal vote. So we have both University of Baltimore State University represented. There are staff members as well as students who are interested. We have the League of Voters in Baltimore, Niagara, the Education Project 1199, New York, Voice, Buffalo. So again, so many organizations are involved in trying to make this change. For the last few months, while initially our thought was focusing on city, we decided to take advantage of Erie County Charter Review, try to enact on the county level. We were able to turn out dozens of people in public meetings, and they were actually quite impressed with the amount of people that we turned out. Unfortunately, they did not decide to vote on RCV. They decided that it was too big of a change to vote on. That instead be legislature. So it was one of 4 recommendations that the commission made to the legislature, saying these 4 are really interesting things that were brought up in our meetings, but they thought there was a review, so they're suggesting that the legislature take it. Anyway, again, that was some of the work that we did the last few months, and now we're going to be shifting our focus towards, advocating for the city, for this to be done through the city charter process, if not done by in the community. We've been educating community members through screening a documentary, Majority Rules, which follows the implementation of this voting in Alaska. Really great documentary, and again, it just shows how it was implemented in Alaska. It follows their House and Senate races that were done a few years back, and interviewing politicians directly. It's a really good documentary. We're going to be reading it again on Wednesday, June 11th at 6:30 p.m. at Ujima. I would love to see some of you there. If you're interested in learning more about RCV, we will also have a short panel discussion to follow with coalition members. Just again, some of the things that I just mentioned here and how we get.
We all are planning on having policies and training kind of really throughout the rest of the year, taking like a smaller break in the summer because there's so much happening. And things that happen over the summer, and people are outside and they're never inside, and if they're inside, then big things are happening. And so we're hoping to release a fall training schedule sometime in August or September. So please join us. I know I'm really excited to be there on June 11th and to watch the film with the other like-minded people, but even the people who are not like-minded, like getting the opportunity to have a conversation about why ranked choice voting is important, ballot reform is important, and how it can create a more representative government for us, right? Like government is for the people, by the people, and if we're not involved, then things really aren't for us. But I wanted to give you the opportunity if you want to share anything else before we close out. I think we got most of the outline said, but any last minute things?
Not that I can think of, but I thank you so much for allowing this opportunity to speak about RCV. Again, we're just trying to get the word out there. A lot of people aren't aware of it. I'm a nerd who always follows the news in other cities, so I've been aware of our TV for a while, but, looking forward to finding the opportunity to do great James Sherman. So I think it'll be really great, equitable in our community. So thank you.
And hopefully, in our next episode together, we'll be able to say that we have racist voting.
Fingers crossed.